Hello, everyone. Welcome back to From the Stands, the College Football Game Day Show. It is Week 11. We are getting really deep into the season here. We have the CFP rankings for the first time this season. We're going to go over that. We're going to go over our parlay parties, of course, and then we're going to go through our shots and chasers, the games that you need to check out. But first, to my left, Mr. Andy Hopper. To my right, Mr. Tom Scavetta with me yet again. And we're going to jump quickly into the weekly recap here, talk about the games from Week 10. So, Andy, what were you watching last Saturday?
Watching my team fucking sleepwalk through their first home loss of the year. 2 fumbles from Luke Altmaier. Really gave Minnesota this game. That wasn't the only reason they lost. Just couldn't get anything going offensively. And the Badgers came into Champaign and unfortunately won 25-17. A couple questionable no calls down the stretch. Illinois driving at the end of that game with a chance to tie it up. They would have had to score and get a 2-point conversion. So who knows if they would have done both of those things. But Luke Altmaier hit late on a slide for a no call and a couple other things. Brett Bielema after the game directly running after the officials, just laying into them for multiple missed calls down the stretch. Is quoted in the press conference as calling that performance from the refs a clown show on Saturday. Now, like I said, I'm not going to blame the refs for Illinois' lackluster performance, but they fall to 6-3. They still have a chance to win 9 games this year. So I think you just keep stacking as many wins as possible. Obviously, that hurts to lose that one and get that first blemish on the home record there. But you have an off week this week, regroup, and then hopefully come back for senior day and just beat the absolute shit out of Michigan State. Other games, Vanderbilt on the road at Auburn, 17-7. Why they were like 7.5-point underdogs and plus 220 on the money line. I mean, that was absolute thievery. That was unfortunately one of like the only underdog bets that I won on Saturday. I was so frisky with these underdogs, boys, and it just did not work out. But Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia, undefeated against the state of Alabama. He absolutely fucking owns Hugh Freeze. Georgia eking out that, I shouldn't say eking out, but they had to come back. They ended up winning 34-20 over Florida. Oregon going to the big house, taking care of business. How about UCLA going into Lincoln and taking down the Nebraska Cornhuskers 27-20? Nebraska favored by 6.5. I bet them. They didn't cover, and they were in my parlay. Fuck you. Indiana continues to fucking impress, guys. This team is so good. Kurt Signetti, Google me, I win. 47-10. They went down 10-0 to the Spartans in this game. People were kind of looking around and start to get a little bit nervous, and they go on to rip off 47 unanswered points there. Texas Tech over Iowa State. I believe the first loss for the Cyclones this year. That Big 12 race, really interesting. And then, god damn, there were so many good games. Louisville leading Clemson the entire way, fellas. In Clemson, that was pretty impressive. And then South Carolina just absolutely taking Texas A&M to the woodshed with a 24-point win at home. So, like I said, I was all over the underdogs this last weekend, and it did not work out for me. So we'll see how this weekend goes, boys.
That's all right. My parlay got hammered as well.
Yeah.
Tom, what were you watching on Saturday?
I had a lot of those 12 o'clock window games up at once. Vanderbilt, wow. They won me a lot of money on Saturday, boys. Damn, like that Vanderbilt money line straight up and putting that with the Indiana spread, that's the way to go this season. Or at least put Vanderbilt against the points because they keep putting them as underdogs. They keep disrespecting them.
Yeah, they're 4.5 right now.
For this week, right? Yeah.
For this week at home, coming off of, we'll get into it later, I'm sure.
We'll definitely get into that. Yeah, cocktail party, messy game on the field and from the stands. Look, the score was deceiving. It was tied 20-20, 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Ohio State beating Penn State. And how about James Franklin interacting with the fan post-game, asking him a question and trying to have like a full-blown conversation with this fan? James Franklin needs to get fired. It's no longer spooky season, James, and you're still bad against Ohio State. The Nittany Lions scored just 3 points after the first quarter. The Cox upset the Aggies. Lenora Sellers' phenomenal game accounted for nearly 350 yards of offense and 3 scores, 286 rushing yards on the ground for these Cox.
Jesus Christ.
Houston upsetting Kansas State at home. How about Houston? Afraid we're not Houston anymore. SMU over Pittsburgh, blowing them out. A lot of us thought Pittsburgh would cover. They did not. Andy, I know Illinois lost, but I think Minnesota is a legit football team this season. They are starting to turn that program around under PJ Fleck. I know it was a tough loss. It was an ugly loss.
They played well, yeah.
Illinois had their chances, but That's a good football team. PJ Fleck is a good coach.
He's a douchebag, but yeah, he won.
And then I'm going to eat this one, boys. Ole Miss putting up a 63-piece on the road over the Hogs. And I went with Arkansas outright. And my God, was I wrong.
I mean, dude, I picked Wisconsin to beat Iowa, and it was 42-10. So yeah, I'm right there with you, dude. Just wrong all across the board. I had Penn State. Yeah, that didn't happen. I have a question. Who would, if they do fire Franklin, who would they go with? Like, who would be the better option for Penn State right now? I don't know. Brian, let's do your weekly recap. That might be a question for another show.
I mean, if you want to improve that offense, maybe try to steal Chip Kelly from Ohio State.
Does he want another head coach?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right, I'll run through mine really quickly. We covered most of the good ones. Yeah, Florida was up at halftime over Georgia. Carson Beck, me and Tom were talking about him after the show a bit because there's a little bit of NFL draft talk. I said I'm not sold on him at all, and then the guy goes and throws 3 picks. I think the last 3 games he's thrown multiple interceptions 3 times in a row, so not a great streak there. Ohio State does hold on over Penn State. It was a fairly close game, but Ohio State I think looked like the better team for most of that game. Yeah, South Carolina over Texas A&M, super impressive win by them. They've been, if they had one less loss, they would, I think, have a chance to make it into this, sneak into the college football playoff later in the season. They've looked really, really good these last few weeks. Bad week to be number 11. Both Iowa State and Clemson, who are ranked number 11, both lose to unranked teams. Yeah, SMU looked really good. I think I went Pitt with them last week. They looked great on the field, destroying Pitt there. Guess I'll shout out my own team. UCF finally looking competent on the field. 56 points on offense. They beat Arizona 56-12 as we throw in a redshirt freshman QB. I loved KJ Jefferson. Loved him on Arkansas. I know we talked him up. He was fun to watch, but the guy just has no arm, no accuracy at all. So I don't know what he's going to do. He's got like raw talent, but way less than like an Anthony Richardson. So I don't know what he does if he wants to go to the NFL draft. Do you try to convert to like a tight end? Because his arm is just, he needs like 5 years of quarterback coaching if he wants to continue playing QB at the next level. So, yeah, good win by us. So I think that's the first time this season I've been able to shout us out for an actual good looking win. That'll move us into our first segment. Like I said, this is the first week that we've had the release of the college football playoff rankings here. The committee got together. We've got our 25. It is on the board now if you're watching in video mode. If you're on audio, you're going to have to look this one up. You can maybe pause it here because I can't run through all 25. It'll just take us too long. But we got a few questions for everyone here about what we think as our general reactions here for the first ranking. A few teams we want to talk about. Andy, I'll start with you. What are your just general reactions on how this 1 through 25 went here?
Army undefeated at 25. I told you guys last week they were going to rate them too low. You have like how many 2-loss teams in front of them, like 5 or 6. I get it, the strength of schedule argument, all that, but I still think they should be rewarded a little bit better for that undefeated record. Indiana, I think, should be a little bit higher than 9, as crazy as that may sound, but they have played just as well as anybody. Other than that, I'm not really too upset with anything here. I think if Miami had won a couple more of those games a little more handedly and hadn't had those crazy comebacks for a couple, they probably have a better case to be ahead of Ohio State and Georgia. But I feel like they have this right as of right now.
All right, Tom, general reactions?
Yeah, so Miami number 4, right spot. Last week I did not say that. I thought they wouldn't jump above 5, but I think the way Penn State lost, yeah, Miami has to move up. Love that Indiana is at number 8. They're getting a lot of respect from this committee. Alabama is too high at number 11. The SEC and the committee clearly wants them in. Even if they lose their 3rd game of the season this week, watch them drop like 2-3 spots minimum. Or max, I should say, not minimum, maximum. Boise State and BYU are going to be very interesting teams to follow. Boys, I don't know if you heard them talk about this, but BYU, with the way the new CFP is set up, they would get a bye right now since they're leading in the Big 12 standings, which is incredible. So, yeah, this has opened a door to a lot of new stuff. I know we've complained about parts of NIL this season, but last season, what were we complaining about? The CFP, especially at the end of the season. Now, I don't know if we're going to have that problem. because, again, if your team doesn't get in, you're clearly not one of the 12 best teams. And we all know all the deserving SEC teams are going to get in. There's going to be 5 SEC teams, my bold prediction, that will make the CFP this season. And there's 7 spots for these other conferences. So have at it.
I agree. Yeah, for me, Boise State and SMU, like with the whole Alabama thing, because SMU is new to the ACC, and because Boise State, obviously similar situation, not one of the power conferences. I think they looked at Alabama, and that's why they kept them over those two, smaller name teams. But yeah, I think you can make a case for putting both Boise State and SMU above Alabama. So I agree with you there, Tom. I think Indiana and BYU. I do agree with Andy. Indiana maybe should be a little bit higher. I think I put them over Tennessee, but I think where they are, for the most part, is fair. It's not like they put them at well, I guess you can't really put them under Notre Dame, but knock them down another spot under BYU. So fair enough for the Hoosiers there. On Miami, I went the opposite way of you on our segment last week, Tom, about what we thought they would get right and wrong. But for me, I thought they were going to get Miami right in terms of putting them below a Texas team there that looks better, looks more consistent. They've got more talent, I would say. Cam Ward, one of the best QBs in the nation. Obviously, you don't want to forget about that. But I think overall as a team, they're more talented. But they keep Miami right there at 4, I guess, because of the undefeated. For me, it's really risky that they end up in 4 behind those 2 one-loss teams, because if they get an embarrassing loss, which they have been close to a few times this season, there's a good chance they could get knocked out of the CFP entirely, because SMU, obviously in the ACC now, they could win that conference, take that bye week, and then Miami is having to rely solely on being a top 12 team. So it's very risky now for Miami if they keep playing like they're playing. They're on the card later, so we will get to talk about them as well. But yeah, for me, fair enough. They did pretty close to what the AP did. I think they only switched around one set of teams. It was Ohio State and Georgia. So yeah, I think fair enough as far as that goes. Our second question here, we have Oregon, Ohio State, and Georgia. They're the top 3 teams. I want to know from you guys which team you think is most likely to not qualify in one of the bye week spots. I thought about doing top 4 here, but I think everyone's answer probably would have been Miami. So we cut them out. We got 3 teams here. Andy, who do you think is most likely to miss out here?
All 3.
Really?
Indiana beats Ohio State, then beats Oregon in the Big Ten championship game.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Tennessee beats Georgia, then wins the SEC title. All 3 of them are out.
Oh,
Indiana takes the Big Ten. Tennessee takes the SEC.
Whoa!
Mic dropped.
Beat that one, boys.
I retire. No chance.
God, just end the show.
Now are Indiana and Tennessee going to take care of business?
That's another question.
That's not what I said. I'm just throwing out this hypothetical, but no, I wanted to be fun with this answer. I wanted to throw you guys off. But yeah, that's what I'm rooting for. I will say, is Indiana to just say fuck it, we'll just be Windiana, and just all they do is win. And then Tennessee, who started off the season really well, has not looked so great down the stretch, but they find themselves to this point with only 1 loss. They have to face Georgia next week. You get a head-to-head win. You knock Georgia down to 2 losses, which I would, because it'd be 2 losses overall and 2 losses in conference play. Tennessee would be, hold on, let me double check this. I believe Tennessee would be, okay, so you'd still have Texas and LSU. No, you'd still have Texas, depending on what they do,
right,
would be the 1 loss. So Tennessee would have to beat, okay, let me change my answer here. Tennessee just has to beat Georgia, and then either them or Texas takes that spot. I guess I'm copying myself out a little bit here. But 3 1-loss teams left, and Georgia has Ole Miss on the road at Ole Miss. They're favored by 2.5, or I think at this point 3 points. Then you got to go 2. No, they host Tennessee, so they have that on their side. But UMass, I mean, throw the records out when Georgia and UMass get together. Really, really awesome of you guys down there in Athens to schedule the mighty Minutemen to come in fucking week 13 or week 14. And then you have the rivalry game with Georgia Tech. So you got 2 games against 2 top 10 teams and 2 games where they should beat them pretty handily. anything can happen. Then they would have, let's say they do win out. I would assume they would have Texas in the God damn it, in the SEC title game. They already beat them once. So in that scenario, I would say Georgia makes it in, but I like my first answer better.
Yeah, that's all the excitement on the table right there. I'm sure Indiana fans were loving hearing that one. Tom, what are your thoughts? Those three teams, which do you think is most likely to miss a bye week qualification spot?
I don't know how I'm beating that first act there by Mr. Hopper. That was something. That might have been Andy's best moment all season right there.
Heisman moment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I'm looking at Oregon's remaining schedule: Maryland, Wisconsin, Washington. They're not losing to any of those three teams. I get it. You'll still have the Big Ten title game, chance for a loss there. But if Indiana, and not to play devil's advocate here, Andy, but that's what I'm going to do. If Indiana goes undefeated and beats Oregon, dude, they lose out on the bye because of the Power Four, right? It's right.
Yeah.
It's okay. So then they would. Never mind that. I can't play devil's advocate then. Again, we're still new to this, like everyone else. Georgia at Ole Miss this week, tough match. Home against Tennessee, tough match. For some reason, UMass is thrown in there. I don't know why. And then Georgia Tech. They'll be paying UMass probably a lot of money because their football program is horrendous. Ohio State has Purdue, Northwestern, Indiana, and Michigan. The answer here to me is Ohio State, because they are the worst of these three teams by far, in my opinion. Beck could throw all the interceptions that he wants. Georgia still wins, and they're still better than Ryan Day's cockeyed Buckeyes. Look, we're going to spoil the show in a couple weeks. Indiana's beating Ohio State. I mean, this is fucking easy. Like, Ohio State should not even be favored in this game. So, yeah, man, Buckeyes are going to drop out of the college football playoff.
Yeah, for me, it's very close between Ohio State and Georgia here. I think Ohio State has the easier schedule because the rest of those games outside of the Indiana game are much easier compared to Georgia's schedule, which is back-to-back. They have to go on the road at Ole Miss this week, and then they play Tennessee here right back again the next week against the number 7 team. So back-to-back, very tough games. Obviously, if they make it through those games, like Andy said, you got a Week 13 cupcake there in UMass, and then finishing out with Georgia Tech, which, hey, maybe if Haynes King is back and healthy, they can put up a little bit of a fight, maybe pull a spoiler there. But, yeah, for me, I think I have to pick Ohio State as well, just because, I mean, Indiana looks so good. I was
to prove it. They have to prove it in a big game.
Yeah, they do go to Ohio State. Playing the shoe is going to be very difficult. But, I mean, Cignetti as a coach, like, I was already sold on them, but then they asked him about, coaches winning quickly and, the high turnover rate of coaches who aren't winning immediately. And he said, I can't remember the exact quote, but he said something you kind of have to win quickly because teams aren't willing to give you 4 to 5 seasons to get the chance to get a winning record.
Exactly.
So I'm going to win now. And I was like, oh my God, incredible quote. And yeah, Indiana has just looked so good. They played the transfer portal really well. Brought over a lot of those guys from James Madison. And yeah, like Tom said, Ohio State I think is the worst of these three. So I'm going to go with Ohio State as well. And then moving to our last question here about the CFP rankings, Colorado is in there at number 20. We shat on them pretty hard at the beginning of the season, last season. It almost seems like they've turned their own hype train down and are actually somewhat focused. They've been winning. Now they're rewarded. They're in the first ranking here at number 20. What I want to know from you guys is, do they squeak into that top 12 to make the college football playoff, Andy?
Well, they certainly have a shot if they win out, right? Is the Big 12, are they still doing a championship game? Or is it just the... Yes, they are?
Yeah, every conference has to have a championship game to qualify for the bye week, I think was their thing.
Okay, but yeah, some of them just eliminated the divisions, which I think is
right,
weird.
Right.
Okay, so Colorado, they have 2 losses. Only one of those is in Big 12 play. They have Texas Tech this week. They have to go to Lubbock. Then they come back. They host Utah. They go to Lawrence and play the Jayhawks. And they come home for the last week of the year and host Oklahoma State. Those are 4 very, very winnable games for Coach Prime's team. So they're going to have to win all of those. They need to win out, and then you got to hope and pray that BYU loses. Well, I guess you don't have to hope BYU loses until the championship game. So BYU's get, because now that I'm thinking about it, there's two. You don't have to be, yeah. So as long as they just make it to the championship game, don't lose.
Right.
BYU has Utah, Kansas, Arizona State, and Houston. You assume they'll be favored in all of those. They should win all of those games. You have the Holy War this week. They have to go to Utah. A tough place to play, but the Utes a little bit down this year from what we've been used to. So, yeah, no, I think Colorado could absolutely squeak in the playoff. It's setting up to be. Obviously, we're 4 weeks away from this, so we'll see. But setting up for a BYU-Colorado Big 12 title game. You beat them, you're in. You lose, I'm not sure.
All right, Tom?
I don't think they have a chance unless they went out and win the Big 12 championship game. And here's why. Look at who they've beaten. Look at who they've played. Their one ranked game was a loss to Kansas State, and that team just lost to Houston. The Big 12 has been very, very bad this year, and this is what's crazy. If you're Colorado, you have to start rooting for other Big 12 teams to win almost, which could hurt you, but also help you. It's a double-edged sword. They're currently tied with Iowa State, who just lost to Texas Tech. Again, another tough team. But, yeah, look, if they beat Texas Tech and Utah, they're getting to the Big 12 title game. There's no denying that. But they lost to Nebraska at Nebraska. UCLA just beat Nebraska. Red flag. It took them until overtime to beat Baylor at home. I'm sorry, Brian. They destroyed UCF.
They did.
Lost to Kansas State at home. That's going to hurt them big time. And then beating Arizona. And then beating Cincinnati unconvincingly. So it's one of those things where not only do you have to get to the Big 12 title game, you have to win it, and you sort of have to win these next 4 games convincingly. Look, this is what I think is going to happen. I think the Big 10 gets 4 teams. Notre Dame is the 5th team, considering they went out, which they should, unbiasedly speaking. SEC is going to get 5, in my opinion. That's 10 teams already gone. I truthfully only think the Big 12 is going to get 1 team, and then you're going to obviously get the G5 in Boise State. That's what's going to happen, guys. There is 1 spot for the Big 12. There is not a second spot for the Big 12. This could be a debate potentially we have on a future show, but that's the way I see it shaking out right now. It's less about Colorado. It's more about the nature of the Big 12 conference in 2024 with all of these schools leaving for like the Big 10 and the SEC. Those are your 2 top-tier conferences now, guys.
Yeah, it's a tough one because 20 is close enough to the bottom of the ranking that it's still an uphill climb. I mean, you still need a lot of teams to lose, and a lot of them up top have already played each other. Obviously, Alabama does have to play LSU still, so that's if LSU especially is the one to lose that game, they'll probably fall behind Colorado as well. But I think they still do it because a lot of the teams above have some difficult games left. I think Pitt especially is one of those teams where they almost at this point they're still a game behind in terms of not having played it in conference play. So maybe something crazy happens, but they sit 4th in the ACC. I don't think the committee is going to keep a team like that in over like a 4th place conference team in over a conference finalist if Colorado continues to win, because at that point their record's looking pretty damn good, and it's not like they go into that game playing an absolute scrub who snuck in there. BYU has looked really good. They're number 8. If they keep winning, they might be 5 or 6 by the time that conference championship game comes around. So for me, I think just enough of the teams above them are going to slide out of the rankings, and Colorado's gonna slip in there, which weird. I never thought I'd be saying that last season or even early this season, but they really have turned it around these last couple of weeks, and they look locked and loaded. So I'm gonna go yes that the Buffs slide into the playoffs this year. And that'll move us into our next segment. It is Parlay Party. We're gonna throw our parlays on the board here as we do every week. 2 conditions as always, plus 1,000 payout is required, and you got to have at least 3 picks here. Andy, we'll start with you. Give us your week 11 picks. Microphone, you're muted.
Yeah, of course I was. Yeah, I loved my parlay last week, and then I think it either went 2-2 or 1-3. I was putting my nuts on the table, and then that didn't work. So we are trying again this week, and let me say, I absolutely love it. Georgia -2.5 at Ole Miss. Iowa State -2.5 at Kansas. Colorado -4.5 at Texas Tech. Vanderbilt +4.5 at home against South Carolina. Plus 1115. $100 again this week. We'll see how this works to win $1,115.87. Let's go. And then if I lose, don't blame me. Sorry.
I love it. Going big yet again with the $100 bet there. Tom, shoot us your picks for week 11 here.
So Boise State scores a lot of points. I think they hit the over with Nevada 60.5 and at -110. Next up, the lock of the season, Indiana. On FanDuel, I got it for -13.5. That comes in at -122. Folks, if you're watching, take this solo, please. Take it solo. Try to get a boost with it too if you can. If not, still take it solo. Bet $100 on it. You'll be very happy if you do that. Maybe you guys will do it too. Next up, I like Vanderbilt outright against South Carolina. Look, South Carolina looked really good last week, but an emotional win like that, you're on the road against a team that did not play super great against Auburn, but they just pulled it out. And Vanderbilt has been money at home this season, and this is plus money at 158. I really like Vanderbilt to win outright. Notre Dame bought a couple points here, -20.5 against Florida State. I think 3 touchdowns is safe for this game. Unfortunately, this game is not on the card. If Florida State played better at the beginning of the season, they probably would have been on the card. And if you asked any of us 3 before the season, hell yeah, this would have been on the card. Not now. -225. That's still pretty bad. Penn State -9.5. I like them to bounce back. After a loss, like the last 4 years, guys, since 2020, they've won their next game by anywhere between 13 to 17 points. So I like them at -9.5 here at -180. That's a little fun fact I think some better should be listening to. And then lastly, Georgia, Ole Miss over 46.5, -295, plus 25.96 odds, $20 for 519.30.
I love it. 6 deep on that one, a 6-shooter. Throw mine on the board here really quickly. Mine's just a week one again. I mean, I got absolutely thrashed last week, so I'm going back to the basics. 4 teams, just squeaking in over plus 1,000. First up, I've got Miami -7 over Georgia Tech. I know I complain every week that Miami just lets teams stay in the game, but Georgia Tech's QB, Haynes King, who has been basically their moneymaker on offense as far as production goes, he's still a game time decision, and I don't know if I think it would be better for them because they're going for a bowl game at the 5 wins they have. I think it would be better for them to keep him on the bench, let him rest 1 extra week, and then go seek out that 6th win in the later games. So I've got Miami -7 there. I bought it down to -7 at -174. Georgia -6 at Ole Miss. I am less optimistic about this one after how we talked about Ole Miss earlier in the show. You boys have scared me here. That offense is very scary, but Georgia, they really need a bounce back win. They are on the precipice of, falling very deep down this playoff order if they take another loss. So I sold some points here to get me over the 1,000 mark. I got Georgia -6 here. That's plus 139. Pittsburgh -6 versus Virginia. Obviously, they took a tough loss against SMU, but Virginia not very good. I think they can beat them by a touchdown. That's -146. And then last, BYU -2.5 at Utah. I won't get too deep into that one at the moment because that is on our card for the games of the week. That is -134. And that gets you to plus 1,007, just over the line. $10 only this week. Not as much of a big spender as Andy here because I don't trust my parlays. Apparently, that is for.
I do too much.
That is $10 to win 110.70.30. But I still feel good. We've been doing so much better this season, getting so many really close up there with only 1 loss. I think we're gonna get some more winners coming. But that's gonna bring us into the final segment of the week. It is of course shots and chasers, the games of the week. Starting off, it's a bit of a weak noon slate here, boys. So not the games people might be expecting. But first up, Georgia Tech versus number 4 Miami here. Like I said, Haynes King questionable for this game. Andy, what do you think here?
This is the 33rd overall matchup between these 2 teams. Oh wait, no, I can't do math. Wait, yes, I can. It's 14 plus it's 20, 29th matchup. Excuse me, I'm stupid. This is the 29th matchup between these 2 teams. It's tied 14-14 between the Yellow Jackets and Burton, catch the fucking ball. Between the Yellow Jackets and the Hurricanes, obviously Georgia Tech coming off that 23-20 upset over Miami last year. I don't know if that happens again this year, fellas. Cam Ward looking to cement his Heisman Trophy status, looking to cement his status as one of the finalists, I should say. He's played just as good at quarterback as anybody else has. I don't know about covering the spread. Miami has not been very good at that against Georgia Tech. 1-5 against the spread against the Yellow Jackets in the last 6 meetings. While the last 6 home games for Georgia Tech, they are 5-0-1 against the spread. So that's something to look out there. I think Miami wins the game. They'll probably be down by 25 points and come back with fucking 12 minutes to go in the game.
As is tradition.
Yeah.
Tom, who do you like to win this game?
Yeah, folks, look, noon slate may be weak, but at least you can tell yourselves that you're probably looking at the 2024 Heisman frontrunner in this game, in Cam Ward. 400 pass yards and 5 touchdowns this past week against Duke. And then this season, he's completed over 67% of his passes. Him transferring over with Davian Martinez from Oregon State, he's been phenomenal this year, 8 rushing touchdowns. And Mark Fletcher, the junior, is really good at being a complimentary back. This offense averages 47 points per game. I don't know how you can't pick them, boys. They have 4 receivers with over 400 receiving yards. Restrepo has been phenomenal with those 9 TDs. Look out for Michelle Powell, too, defensively, 4 picks. And the Canes have 27 sacks. I don't know how Georgia Tech's O-line is going to hold up because Haynes King is expected to play, but he's still listed as questionable. And you know what's crazy? He's been sacked once all season long. He's been sacked once. That's it. I think what keeps Georgia Tech around in this game is the feat of Haynes King. He has 6 rushing touchdowns on the season, one of the most underrated QBs in the nation. Unfortunately for the Yellow Jackets, they will not get enough pressure on Cam Ward. He will wine and dine them to the finish line. Miami wins, fails to cover the spread.
Ooh, all right. Yeah, I mean, again, I had to throw 2 games on here, and it seemed like a good one because, like Andy said, they very well could just be down by 3 touchdowns at halftime. They have been coming back, but who knows if Haynes King is there, maybe they can throw enough points on the board for the Yellow Jackets to hold off Miami and finally give them the loss that seems like it's been coming for the last 6 weeks or so. But yeah, Miami, they're a team that puts up really big numbers with players that make really big plays. Cam Ward threw for 400 yards versus Duke last Saturday. Xavier Restrepo caught 3 of those. So incredible duo there that they've got. But yeah, yet again, the Canes forced themselves to erase another double-digit deficit in the second half to get that win. Georgia Tech, on the other hand, trying to scrape by with Haynes King these last few weeks. It hasn't gone well. If he's back, I think they can play this pretty close here. And like I said, they're trying to become bowl eligible. They're good enough, I think, to be bowl to go bowling. Do they do it here? Probably not, even with Haynes King. I mean, there's just too much firepower. I don't want to say there's too much firepower also on defense, but I do have one player that I've really loved watching on their team, so he's my player to watch. It is defensive back Michelle Powell, one of the most competent players in the secondary, maybe the only competent player in Miami secondary. He leads their offense with 4 interceptions and 2 pass deflections. So my feeling is if he can get something early to get the rest of the defense hyped up, maybe they can hold Georgia Tech's offense to a low-scoring game and not need to come back. So I'm going to ride here with Miami. Next up, we have Rutgers taking on Minnesota. I said the 12 noon slot was weak. We got Minnesota Rutgers on the card for you. Andy, who do you like here?
Yeah, so this is a tale of 2 very different teams coming into this game, right? You have Rutgers, the hosts. They're on a 4-game losing streak. Minnesota comes in on a 4-game winning streak. What has been the big thing for the Gophers during this winning streak? The turnover margin. They are +9 on the turnover margin in these last 4 games and +12 overall for the season. A big thing for Rutgers is taking care of the ball. Shiano, one of his sayings, the ball is the program. You don't hurt yourself. You don't make mistakes. You are going to win a lot more games than you lose. I will call this the Ethan Kaliakmanis revenge game as he transferred over to Rutgers in the offseason from Minnesota after being their starter last year. But I think Minnesota has all the momentum on their side. I think they're going to win this game.
All right, Tom?
Yeah, look, this is scary because this could be prime position for a letdown here. They're riding high. They just beat Illinois. It's tough to win back-to-back road games against 2 quality Big Ten opponents. But I think the Golden Gophers have what it takes. They're on a 4-game winning streak. Really good defensive team, and it goes overlooked. I want to start with their defense. Ja Joyner, 4.5 sacks on the season. He's been really, really good for them. Cody Lindenberg as well leads them in tackles, and he's really good dropping back into coverage, has 6 passes defended. Jack Henderson, 3.5 sacks for a DB, not bad. They disguise blitzes very, very well. Justin Wally, Ethan Robinson, another couple guys to keep an eye on for them. Defensively, Max Brosmer is their quarterback. He's nothing special, but he gets the job done. Focal point on their offense is Darius Taylor, nearly 650 rushing yards, 8 rushing scores. And how about this? 315 receiving yards for a running back this stage in the season with 2 scores as well. The Scarlet Knights, we mentioned how Minnesota's on a 4-game winning streak. Well, Rutgers is on a 4-game losing streak. Kaliak Mattis will be playing with a chip on his shoulder this week. Kyle Monangai has to be the catalyst here. They have to be able to run the football. The problem is they won't be able to. The Scarlet Knights have allowed 35 plus in the point total over the last 3 games. Regardless if they could run the football or not, guys, their defense will not hold up. Minnesota covers the 6-point spread.
Yeah, Andy, I noted those 2 streaks as well. That's kind of why I threw this on here. It's one of those games where, like Tom just said, Minnesota, it'll be tough. The back road opponents that are good, 5 in a row versus a team that they might be looking at saying, hey, they lost 4 in a row. This should be easy, but who knows? That's the type of game where you kind of let your guard down sometimes. So it's an interesting one. Rutgers probably going to lean a lot on, like you said, Kyle Monangai. He needs just 69 yards to hit the 1,000 mark for the second straight season. They've been relying on him heavily for their offense there. He started off the season hot, 600 rushing yards in the first 4 games, but he has trailed off a little bit. He's only got 1 100-yard rushing game since then. So they have been feeding him the ball a few less times per game, a few less carries per game for him. So that maybe accounts for a little bit of it as the offense sort of settled in to that playbook. But still, he's doing a great job there in the backfield for the Scarlet Knights. Minnesota, they got one of the more interesting transfers of the season. Like you said, they lost their QB, revenge game, but the guy that they brought in, Max Brosmer, he came from FCS team New Hampshire, very small school there, but he's adapted really well. He's completing 68% of his passes amongst a very respectable O-line protection there. And that 68% would be a program record for Minnesota. So well done by him to adjust to this new environment. Obviously the FBS much tougher than the FCS in a really tough conference. So good for him. And then another bit of dueling streaks here for this game. Rutgers has given up 40 points per game in their last 3 losses. Meanwhile, the Gophers are averaging 30 plus points per game during their win streak. So, Rutgers defense has just looked, it's got too many holes right now. So I'm going to stick with Minnesota because that offense is still pumping out points. Illinois played them tough, but Minnesota looks really good. So, moving on to 3:30. Finally, a little bit of ranked action here. We have number 16 Ole Miss taking on number 3 Georgia. Andy, who do you like in this one?
Man, so I have Georgia. I put them in my parlay, so that kind of spoils my pick there. I do think they win the game, but I want to say Ole Miss has a shot. I think they do. We've seen Carson Beck. We talked about it earlier. We've seen him turn the ball over. If he turns the ball over 3 times and Ole Miss's offense gets going the way it, we've seen it play at times, the Rebels absolutely have a chance to win this game. Do I think they're going to hang 60 points again and have 700 total yards of offense this week against this Georgia defense? Absolutely not. They have their work cut out for them. But I do think there is a path to the Rebels winning this game. But I like Georgia to eke it out. Ole Miss is 0-4 against top 5 teams in the Lane Kiffin era. They have not beat a top 5 team since I believe they took down number 2 Alabama back in 2015. Yeah, 2015. That's right. So, yeah, give me the Bulldogs here, but I think Ole Miss has a chance to keep it close.
All right, Tom?
Yeah, look, UGA coming off a tough win, game that was too close for comfort. Beck's interception total now for the season is at 11. I still think he's a very good quarterback. He's just at a real tough, dry spell right now. And he's still going to make plays. It's not always with his arm, too. It's with his legs. His legs are very underrated. Trevor Etienne in the backfield is a huge plus. Arian Smith has been great. Dominic Lovett, Dylan Bell. Lawson Lucky at tight end has played a huge role lately. Yeah, he's pretty lucky, all right. Defensively, Jalen Walker has led the charge, 4.5 sacks. I like what I've seen from Chaz Chambliss as well. He did a really, really nice job this week. I'm assuming somebody just scored.
Jamar Chase on like an 80-yard first play of the drive.
Wow.
They make as long as they make the extra point, tie game, 28-28, 5:37 to go in the ball game, fellas.
And these reactions says it all. Folks, yep, we love recording during Thursday Night Football. Malachi Starks has been solid in the secondary as well. The Rebels just smoked them last week, the Hogs, that is. But can the Rebels
smoking hog?
Can they run the football? Because they average 178 rushing yards per game. Now, here's the key, right? We know Henry Parrish is really good. He's got 10 scores. Will Trey Harris be available for Jackson Dart? If he is, then this is a very competitive game. There is no word on his status yet for this week. And Dart's already thrown for over 3,200 yards this season. He completes nearly 72% of his passes. They could really use Harris. But if he's not there, expect Caden Lee to step up, leading receiver in yards. Jordan Watkins as well, 7 touchdowns. Antoine Wells Jr., and they have a good defense. They have a good defense that can cause some turnovers. Trey Amos with 3 picks. Jared Ivey, Suntrain Perkins, Princely Umanmalin. They're all good future NFL players. There is one key stat, though. Ole Miss has beaten Georgia just once since 1996. Once. And I believe Andy and I were toddlers. Brian McCardle, you were a very, very young kid. So, yeah, take that into consideration. Georgia.
All right.
Forgot to get my pick. I'm like, there you go.
Okay, yeah. For me, Ole Miss on the brink of missing out on the CFP. A loss here really potentially dashes their hopes entirely. It would take a lot to get them back in, as they already sit down at number 16. But they do have an explosive offense. We talked about how they earlier in the weekly recap they put up 63 points last week. Jackson Dart, I think, had like over 500 yards, like just over, but still 500 yards. So that offense, Lane Kiffin does have it cooking. They're second in the country in yards per play at 7.7, I believe, just behind Miami, which understandable why you'd be behind them in yards per play. And then, yeah, as far as Georgia goes, a really slow start for them last week. Maybe they're distracted, like we were talking about pre-show about the fights in the stands, but they did get focused eventually. But, breakdown in the O-line and some ill-advised throws from Carson Beck did give the Gators that lead at halftime. So 3 interceptions that game. Like I said earlier, his last 3 games, he's had multiple interceptions. He really needs to get it together here. And this is going to be a really tough defense, throwing him into the fire here to try and break that streak against an Ole Miss defense that's super, super aggressive. They counter that second-ranked defense, counter that with the second-ranked defense in the nation. They average 4.56 sacks per game. So if you thought Carson Beck was under pressure and making errant throws before, just wait until this game, because it could get really bad if that defense finds some holes in that line. They also average 10.1 tackles for loss per game. And yeah, that fiery pass rush led by Suntrain Perkins. He's got 9 sacks, and I think Tom brought him up. Princely Umanmalin, he's got 7.5 of his own. Both are top 10 in the nation. My only concern with Ole Miss here is that Henry Parrish Jr., their leading rusher, is going to be out again. Wide receiver Trey Harris is doubtful. So they put up a lot of points, but they are missing 2 of their biggest production leaders on that offense. Yeah, I don't know. Everything I just said seems to lean Ole Miss, but yeah, they do struggle a lot against Georgia. So I think I'm going to go with the dogs here. They're getting desperate. They're getting really desperate. They can't afford another loss, I don't think. Not that Ole Miss can, but I don't know if Ole Miss sneaks into the playoff. So I'll go dogs here. And then our chaser for the midday slot, we have Texas Tech taking on number 20 Colorado. Andy, who do you like to win this one?
Yeah, give me the Buffaloes in this game. I think they're the better team. I think similar to what Tom was talking about earlier with South Carolina and the emotional win. Texas Tech coming off an emotional late win over Iowa State. Can they carry that in to another home game hosting this ranked Buffaloes team who is playing for the playoffs? So that can they play spoiler again this week? I'm not sure they have that 2 weeks in a row. I'm going to go Colorado.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, you would think I would use that logic here with this game as well. Spoiler alert, I'm not. But there's a key why in this game. Yes, the Red Raiders coming off a huge upset at Iowa State. Now, this is the problem. Texas Tech's biggest defensive strength is their secondary. Colorado is a one-dimensional offense, and their secondary is one of the best in the Big 12. CJ Bakersville has been really good this season. 3 interceptions. Chapman Lewis with 3 as well. AJ McCarty with 2. They don't give up many passing touchdowns to Big 12 opponents. That's the reality of the situation. But when you have a game changer like a Travis Hunter, it's going to be a factor. LeJontay Webster as well. Great receiver. Shedeur Sanders, we all know who he is. That's the problem with me. Can Colorado's defense get stops on the road and be able to mix in the running game? Or is this a continued NFL draft process interview for Shedeur Sanders? I think it's the latter, and I think it cost them this game. I really think that Texas Tech secondary is really, really good.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That was one of the things that I was going to point out as well.
Holy
Oh my! What do we have
Derek,
live here?
Derrick Henry just got his pants pulled down. And his ass was like half out. I just saw Derrick Henry's crack.
Oh my God! Just a little Thursday night football crack
Yeah,
action.
I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, they're showing a replay. What are you doing?
It's for the ladies out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. Deion Sanders, his crew is just one conference game back for the lead of the Big 12. They're tied with Iowa State. Interestingly, the Buffs play neither Iowa State or conference leader BYU, and then BYU does not play Iowa State either. So none of these teams will meet, so there won't be any head-to-heads to easily decide a tiebreaker if all three end up tied with one loss in the conference to get into that conference title game. So that could affect what I was talking about earlier with the question on whether Colorado can sneak into the playoff there. But yeah, the team they're playing, very tough. Like Tom said, very good secondary. Texas Tech. They have met with Iowa State. They pulled off a tough 1-point victory over the Cyclones. That was the Red Raiders' 5th one-score victory this season. So I do agree with Tom that this Texas Tech team is very tough, but I hate riding with the Miami, last year's Washington-style teams that just leave it on the line until late. There's always room for disaster when you let teams stick around. So, but obviously, I got to talk about quickly QB Shedeur Sanders. He's been racking up the yards, and to your point, the playbook has basically been catered to pad his stats for the NFL draft. The run game pretty much non-existent, but the offense is still producing. So, bit one-sided. It's going to be interesting to see how that pass game does against Texas Tech defense there. And then obviously Travis Hunter, I got to mention him, playing well on both sides of his two-way play there. He's logged over 350 snaps on each side of the ball, 757 yards receiving on offense, and he's tied atop the conference on defense with 7 pass breakups. As far as Texas Tech goes, the biggest weapon, Taj Brooks, he's just 121 yards short of breaking the school rushing record. He's been great to watch. And in his career at Texas Tech, he's currently 5th in the FBS with 130.9 yards per game, and he has 8 rushing touchdowns to go with it. I think Colorado's going to win this game, so I'm going to take the Buffs. But I'm going to throw a weird one in here and say that Taj Brooks gets 3 touchdowns in this game. So Colorado's going to have to score if they want to win this one. But I think Taj Brooks is going to run right through this Colorado defense.
Let me see if I can find odds on that for you.
All right. Continue. I'll start with Tom in this next one then. We're moving into our night games. Love to see a Tiger Stadium late night game here during this rivalry. It is number 15 LSU taking on number 11 Alabama. Always a spicy one here. Tom, who do you like to win this matchup of the Behemoths?
Yeah, and this is a great quarterback matchup, too. 2 guys being highly scouted by NFL scouts for the draft, in Jalen Milroe and Grant Nussmeier. Bama favored by 3 on the road. The loser of this game is virtually out of the CFP, in my personal opinion. Milroe, 13 passing touchdowns, 12 rushing. Jam Miller can jam it up. 7 touchdowns running on the season. And Ryan Williams, is he 18 yet? Is he finally 18?
I think he's still 17.
Anyway, he'll probably get 17 touchdowns before he turns 18. Williams has 7 on the season. Really good vertical threat for Milroe. Jeremy Bernard, too. Defensively, I love what they have in Sab, Jackson, and more. You want to get up front on these receivers like Lacey and Anderson. Press them at the line of scrimmage. Don't let them get leverage on you. Grant Nussmeier has the ability to make plays with his arm. I think he has the slightly better arm compared to Milroe. This is the difference between LSU and Alabama and a lot of other CFP teams. If Milroe has a bad game, Bama loses. I mean, they can't recover if he has a bad game. If Nussmeier happens to have a bad game, LSU has a chance to win this football game. I like what they have in Caden Durham at running back. Defensively, good players. Zy Alexander, Whit Weeks, Savion Jones. He can get to the quarterback. But the difference here for me, boys, is Jam Miller and that Alabama offensive line. Throw some love to Justice Haynes as well. Bama has won 3 out of the last 4 meetings. I'm going with the Tide.
All right. Andy, you still looking for that stat? Or
yeah, I got it.
Okay.
So to score 1 touchdown, he is minus 340.
Okay.
Expected. To score 2 touchdowns plus 130. and to score 3 touchdowns plus 460.
Ooh.
That's insanely low to score 3 fucking touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always like that for college dudes. It's just like, let's get real. Let's get real. But yeah, I had to find that once you said it. Was expecting it to be a little juicier than that. I'm going to be honest with you. But it is what it is. I'm going to go against Tom. I'm going to take LSU to win this game. Death Valley at night. It is an experience that is on my bucket list. I want to make it out to one of these games one day. But LSU has found themselves in almost all of their games to the absolute bitter end. Hell, they won that one game a couple weeks ago after leading for zero minutes, 0 seconds. So I like them to pull the upset off the first year Kalen DeBoer Alabama Crimson Tide.
All right. Yeah, unbelievably, these teams meet yet again with one team able to knock their rival out of a chance at the CFP. But it's crazier this year because this is happening during a 12-team playoff. Both teams unexpectedly sitting at 2 losses, and now one at least is guaranteed to get 3. So, both teams already were on the outside looking in for a shot at the SEC championship game. And to be honest, the tail end of the playoffs, they can't really slip up anymore. The Tigers last week, they went into halftime with a 17-7 lead over Texas A&M, and then they absolutely boofed it completely. Awful second half there. They lose to Texas A&M 38-23. As far as the QBs go, you talked about Milroe. He ran for 155 yards and 4 touchdowns against LSU last season. So that was kind of a coming out moment as far as just how good he was with his feet. And then we just saw last week, like I said, they fell to Texas A&M, and a lot of that was because quarterback Marcel Reed ran for 3 touchdowns against that LSU defense. So now they've got another runner at their hands. Is that D-line going to be able to keep him contained and not let him get to the second level, get those yards on the ground? I think it's going to be really hard for them to stop the QB play from taking off. On the other side of the ball, Garrett Nussmeier, second half of the previous game, he threw 3 second half interceptions. So maybe it was an SEC QB thing last week. 3 interceptions was the way to go. But yeah, that was a major factor there in LSU losing that game, just absolutely collapsing against the Aggies. But still, the offense generally this season has been really good. They're second in the SEC in passing touchdowns with 20. That's 8th, good for 8th nationally. Alabama has dropped 2 of its last road games. So, like you guys said, this is in Death Valley. That's always a really scary place to play at night. And Alabama just, without Saban, they're not locking in on the road. So, yeah, I think I'm going to have to go Tigers here. Crazy environment. If anyone ever has a chance to go there to Tiger Stadium, to Death Valley, to see an LSU night game, please take up that opportunity. It always gets crazy. It's going to be a good one either way, and I think it'll be close. But I'm going to lean also with LSU here. And then closing out the show with a war. We got the Holy War. It is Utah taking on number 9 BYU. Rankings are a little bit flipped. Usually Utah comes into this game ranked with BYU trying to play spoiler, but it's the other way around this year. Andy, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any reason why BYU doesn't win this game, to be honest with you, to get it out of the way early there. I know I said earlier Utah's a tough place to play, but Retzloff has the Cougars buzzing this year, boys. The Holy War, one of the best rivalry names in college football. I love that. You throw the records out when these two teams get together, obviously, but, you'll see Isaac Wilson, at least to start, it looks like, under center for Utah. He has been an absolute liability. That runs in the family. He is Zach Wilson's younger brother. So they actually have some bad blood here in this rivalry this weekend. But I think BYU gets it done. I don't trust Utah's offense at all.
All right, Tom?
Yeah, like Utes coming off a bye, but 4-game losing streak. They have not cracked the 20-point mark since September 21st.
Oof.
Awful. Yeah, Wilson has as many touchdowns as picks. His completion percentage is bad. Micah Bernard cannot. He can't be utilized because of how bad the offense is, and part of it is the play calling, sure, but I'm talking like they're an NFL team here. That's just shit. Brant Kuth is their best weapon, and his draft stock is falling, unfortunately, because of how bad this offense is. Get him the football, please. Defensively, I think the defense will keep them in this game, and that's the only reason why this is just a 3-point spread. Van Fillinger, phenomenal edge rusher. Jake Retzloff will have his hands full. I like him, though. I like what I've seen from him this year. I've been very, very impressed. And defensively, too, BYU has upped their game. Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker, a couple dogs right there. Tanner Wall, Jacob Robinson with 2 picks. And I got to shout out my guy, Parker Kingston. That dude, watch him run for another touchdown on specials again in that Mormon-style heat up in Utah. And Parker Kingston going for the IV, going for the oxygen mask, and just yakking on the sideline again. I would love to see that happen twice this season. Parker Kingston will score a touchdown in this game.
Ooh.
BYU wins.
Yeah, like you said, the Holy War, it's always, even if the game isn't good, the pre-game interviews and the week prior are always really, really juicy. I don't remember which player it was specifically because I saw it while I was at work. Don't tell anybody. But they asked, obviously, about the thoughts on the Holy War, and the kid that they asked just looked up real quick and goes, "Fuck BYU," and then puts his head back down. So these two teams do not like each other over in the Mormon land of Utah. But yeah, Utah, they're on a 4-game losing streak. Had Cam Rising been healthy, this game probably would have been a bit more interesting on the card. Obviously, injured again. Is he going to come back next year for an 8th year? I think you just got to hang it up at this point. But Utah has struggled since he did pick up that injury this season, and they don't know what they're going to do. At QB, Kyle Whittingham, the coach of Utah, said that he has reopened the QB competition, and that's because both QBs have been fairly inefficient. So they don't know. Maybe they know by today, but as of that interview, they didn't know who they were going to go with. The Cougars, they've generated 18 takeaways through 8 games. That includes 14 interceptions. So they've been great on offense and on defense. Obviously, BYU does like to get a lot of the, I guess we'll say, I don't want to be disrespectful here, so I'll say the Islander nations, the Samoans, the big boys on the line, and then they fill out that secondary with some absolute ballers. So BYU's more or less usually known for their defense, and they've got a good one this season as well. But on offense, also, they're averaging 37.6 points per game against Big 12 opponents. Cougars have scored 34 more points in each of their 5 Big 12 games so far. And then the most interesting stat, I thought, is that regardless of someone getting stuffed, maybe the run game's not going well, maybe the pass game's not going well, they've found a way to adapt and power through with the other side of the offense. They've had either a 100-yard rusher or 100-yard receiver in 7 of their 8 games this season. So they're really utilizing all their weapons. I think they win this game pretty easily here. And the Holy War is not really much of a war, but just a straight Mongolian-style slaughter over a weakened Utes team. That is going to wrap up our show here. Thank you to everyone for joining us for Week 11. We are getting there. We finally had the CFP rankings come out. Only a few weeks left before we hit the conference championship games. But enjoy the games this weekend. Enjoy my boys' links down below. They've got their own shows. Those links are down in the description. Thank you for sticking with us all the way to the end here. We'll see everyone back here, same time, same place, for Week 12.